Alright, here's the wood I'm going to be using. I'm going to be working on the floor today. So I've got some 4x4s pressure treated, some 2x6s pressure treated. And I think that's all I'll need for today. And there's some plywood there that I'll be using. And I think these are the tools I'll need. So I've got a miter saw and a power drill and some squares, framing square and a speed square and a 3-foot level and some miscellaneous things, but I think that's all I'll need. So time to get to it. Alright, so I've got my beams laid out where I think I want them. So I've got them going down that way. So one beam per 3 piers. And I laid it out this way just because there's more room to drill the holes this way than if I were to go that way with the beams. And so you see, so to get them, try to get them squared up, I set up this line that goes from this bolt down to that one, and I'm measuring an equal distance from the string to the end of this post, so that they'll all be relatively at the same position on this side, on the right side, so that on the left side they'll all be at about the same position there too. So, okay, so I have leveled the 4x4s out, and that's what we have. So that took a little while, but it's worth it. Don't want an unlevel shed, and so I think these things are going to be a problem now. Probably gonna have to cut those and then make little notches in the 2x6s that's gonna sit on top of here. But oh well, I think it'll be okay. Level. Look at that. Anyway, so I'm gonna start putting the 2x6s up there to make the floor. Alright, so I've got all my wood cut for the floor, or the subfloor. These are all 2x6x12s. So these pieces that are facing, that piece that's facing me right now is 12 feet long. And in order to make a 12x12 box, those cross members need to be 11 feet 9 inches. I also got it squared up, which is very important for your floor. Because if you don't have a square floor, then none of your measurements are going to work out very well. And everybody on YouTube says, make sure your diagonals are the same distance. And what they really mean is use the Pythagorean theorem. So you take this big box and you make 2 triangles out of it. You know, you just draw an imaginary line from there to there. And since it's a 12x12 box, you do 12 squared plus 12 squared equals some unknown number squared. So you take 144 squared plus 144 squared, and you take the square root of that, and you get the diagonal measurement that you're supposed to have. And for this one, it turns out to be 203 inches and about 3/4 of an inch. And I got roughly that, so I'm happy. So now I'm gonna, these are connected here, got those screwed in, and I've got this tacked in place. Well, not tacked, we're not welding, but it's held in place by some screws to the 4x4s. So now I'm going to be using these handy little things that I drew. Those are my 16-inch on center markings. So I'm just going to center up this board with that mark and screw it in. So do that with all these boards, and I should have a subfloor. I think that's about it for now, so I'm just going to go screw those in, then I'll start putting plywood on top. Now I've got the floor all braced, so I had the joist running lengthwise that way, but if you just kind of leave it like that, and these are 16 inches on center, so with this 3/4 inch plywood that I'm using, I've been told it will be a little squishy. So to add extra support for the plywood, I put those braces in, and so those are every 3 feet. So there's 4 boxes go running down the length. And remember, when you cut these, this one is going to be 3/4 of an inch shorter than all of these middle ones. Pro tip. anyways, I screwed all those in. So now I'm going to put the plywood on. And something I didn't mention was these joist hangers that I hadn't put in before, but I was told was a very good idea. So install joist hangers to hang your joists, floor joists, ceiling joists, whatever. And notice that these are staggered so that you can screw the blocks in on each side. So now I'm going to put this plywood on. I have 5 sheets to cover this 12 by 12 shed, and I'll have half of a sheet left over, so a 4 by 4 piece of plywood left, if my calculations are correct. And after I've got everything, before I put down the first piece of plywood, I'm going to make sure that the floor is square. And when it's square, I'm going to, right now the floor is not, it's just tacked down with that screw there and one on that other corner. So I'm going to square up the frame of the floor with the first piece of plywood. Then I'll just start screwing it all down and everything should just work. Here's the decking all on, and it's level all directions pretty much, so that's a good thing. What I did, there are 2 layers here. So I put the 3/4 inch that I had on there, and not sure if you can see that, that's on the bottom. And then I got another 1/2 inch treated plywood layer on the top. And the reason for that was the 3/4 inch wasn't as firm as I would have liked, but that's all taken care of now. And I don't know if you can see the pattern, maybe you can, but I've got, let's see, 1, 2, 3 full sheets of plywood there, a 4th one here, and then half in the corner. And the layer on the bottom has the same pattern but in reverse, and that's to minimize seam overlapping from the 2 layers. You don't want that. So that corner piece on the bottom layer is over in that corner. So remember to do that. And when I put the second layer on, I use some adhesive that I got at the Restore, Habitat for Humanity. You can see that coming out there. There it is. Anyways, that's very important. Bond the 2 layers together. And when you're screwing the second layer down, you only need to screw into the first layer. So you don't need super long screws to reach into the floor joists. That'd be a little tough. I guess the next step is to start framing stuff. Alright, now I'm getting ready to lay out my first wall, which is going to be on this side of the shed. It's going to have 2 windows. That's irrelevant right now. But the first thing we need to do to lay those things out is to get our the box that the frame is going to sit on square, and we do that by snapping chalk lines, which I've done here. And you see the guy going all the way down there. And the way you get that square is you pick your favorite side and start with that guy. So I picked this side since this is where the door is going to be. So the door is going to be here. We're going to be seeing this side. Those are the 2 sides. Not so much. So I wanted to go off of this side. So I measured 3.5 inches from this edge over, and 3.5 inches on that edge. And then I just snapped a line from one point to the other. So that gave me a point to go off of. Then, since I wanted this other side to be the nicer side, I then went and did this one. But the way you do that is you take 3.5 inches from this edge over, but then you need to figure out where exactly your line's going to fall there. So again, you use the Pythagorean theorem, but you use an easier method. There's the 3, 4, 5 or the 6, 8, 10, whichever triangle you feel like calculating. But what it means is you measure 3 feet from your 3.5 inch mark here over, and I think you can see it right there. So that's 3 feet. Maybe that's 4 feet. Can't remember. But one of these is 3 feet, one of these is 4 feet. So then I measured a line over here. Ooh, I'm in the sun, I'm in the shadows there. I measured over here, and then from that point to that point over there is supposed to be 5 feet. And so wherever that falls on the line over here is where you snap your line. So wherever you make a long line here, and wherever the 5 foot mark falls on this long line, you draw a line that way, and then you snap your line. And so then you go around the whole perimeter doing that. It makes it so that this corner right here is nice. This corner right here is not so nice, but it's nicer than that corner over there. If you're like me and an amateur and everything's not completely square, but this makes sure that the frame is going to be square. So that's what I did there. So now I'm going to start cutting up that wood. I got my 2x12s to make my window headers, structural headers, and I got all those studs over there to frame out the first wall. So I'm going to start cutting and get down to business. One more thing, in order to figure out what I need to cut, I went to Walmart and got this graph composition notebook, and it's fantastic. So you can draw everything to scale and see what you need where, and then you can calculate your dimensions for your lumber. So I highly recommend it. So now I'm going to start cutting, and then I'll get back to you with me putting stuff up, or laying out the frame, I suppose. I've got my wood cut now, and before I can lay everything out, I had to mark my top and bottom plates. So that's what I've got here. I've got them screwed together on their sides, and just marked out everything that I think I'll need. And if we travel on here, it's a little easier. So this is where one of the windows is going to sit. That's the header, and that thing is two 2x12s cut to the right length that I need, and there's a piece of 1/2-inch plywood sandwich in there so that it's the right width for a 2x4 to go on the bottom. So that guy will sit there, and then if you see my little configuration here, I've got a king stud on the outside, a jack stud holding up the header, and then a cripple stud down on the bottom. And so learning the terminology was interesting. Kings, jacks, cripples, blah blah blah. But that's what they use, so that's what I'm using. And got the same thing over here. So now I just need to lay everything out properly, and we will see what it looks like. So I've got this laid out now. So I started with the rough openings for the windows, put the headers up there where they're supposed to be, then put the king studs down, the jack studs, and then the cripples, and then I put the little sill for it. So there's 2 of those. And then I just put the normal studs 16 inches on center. And when I had drawn this, there was supposed to be another stud right next to the king stud there, but putting this all together in real life, I don't think that that's really necessary to have 2 full-length studs right next to each other, especially with that header. So I just took those out. So instead of that being 16 inches from there, it's like 18. So I don't think it's a big deal, especially for a shed. It's not going to be holding up a lot of weight. So that's all done. Well, it's all laid out and ready for me to fasten together. So I'll be doing that now. Alright, here's the first wall all framed up. See the windows in there with the king stud right next to the jack stud, right next to the cripples, windowsill, and everything went together fine. There's some scrap wood in there. That's just extra. I'm cleaning up. The only thing that went wrong was these headers. I had assumed, silly me, that like most lumber, like the dimensions were a 1/2 inch shorter than what the nominal dimensions are. So 2 by 12 was really 1.5 by 11 1/4. So my jack studs, I was short 1/4 of an inch, and that wouldn't do very well. So I had to recut those with fresh pieces of wood. It's very sad. But other than that, everything's looking good. Frame is square. And I just need to put some sheathing on it before I stand it up. So, till the next wall. So here is the first wall, kind of braced up. It's not securely on there, but these braces will hold it in place for the time being. And there's not much to see here except for the sheathing. If we come over here, see that there's a brace going up there on that side, and there's another long brace going up to the top. And I used a level to make sure it was plumb, and a friend to help lift this because this is super heavy, especially with all that plywood and those headers. It just wasn't fun. And but we got it up there for the time being. Now I'm going to work on this back wall here, or what will be the back wall, the wall right next to it on this side. Here's wall number 2 standing. This one went up a whole lot faster, and you can see why. There's only like 10 studs going, side to side. Whereas this guy, if you can see him very well in the light, but it had a lot more wood. I think I used about 20 pieces of 2 by 4 by 8s for all that stuff. So this wall was a lot lighter and didn't have the headers, so it went a lot faster. So I'm hoping this third wall on this edge here will also go faster. Let's find out. Here's the third wall standing, and second and third wall, it's very helpful to have 2 or 3 other people, well, 2 or 3 people total, getting the wall up so you can get it somewhat plumb and in place. And especially, I put those double top plates on, and apparently you're supposed to wait on those. I didn't. I put them up there with the double top plate on, so they interlock, but it's a tight fit when you're trying to push the wall into the other wall. But anyway, everything's coming together nicely, and I've got my lumber cut for the 4th and final wall. You see this guy is the header for the doorway, and I'm making that the entrance 60, well, it's 61 inches to give you a little bit of room, but a nominal 60-inch doorway. So that's what I got right now. Gonna call it a night, and then tomorrow I'll try to put that wall together. One thing I wanted to mention about the windows, so I put plywood over those, and I saw online an easy way to do this, and it is easy, is to get these things cut out, and I'll show you over here. I already cut this one out, but this guy over here, inside on the corners of the windows, I drilled screws through and left just enough for them for me to be able to run a chalk line to all 4 corners. So you see I got my chalk line going up there, and then it goes over and down, back over here to this screw. So just draw a chalk line, then you take your circular saw and you just cut it out. And now we have the finished product, 2 windows cut out. Okay, here's the last wall standing, and it's got the plywood up. I found out that walls without plywood are a lot lighter than walls with plywood, especially with that header on there. Well, even with the header on there, it was lighter than lifting up, say, that back wall with all the plywood on it. So we're just gonna walk in, see what we got in here. I still got my bottom plate on the door, so I need to cut that out. But hanging this plywood up vertically wasn't as fun as when it's on the ground. But take a look on the inside here, and there's the header for the doorway. It's made the same way as the headers over here for the windows, just bigger. And we got double jack studs. mosquitoes. That's why the camera keeps jerking. We got double jack studs holding the doorway up. And let's see what else. So just take a look in the inside. All the walls are pretty plumb. Check that with a level. Just put them on a moderately straight stud and see if it's level in the vertical direction. Oh, we have 2 windows, some walls, more mosquitoes. And let's see, my circular saw I bought it at a garage sale, and apparently the previous owner had sawed through the cord and repaired it. Well, the repair came undone, but it was just as I was cutting out this last window, so that was good. Got that all cut out. Anyway, so the next step. Oh, one thing I wanted to mention here was so these walls are there's braces on the outside, but they're just there for my peace of mind. These studs in the corners are screwed together, and the double top plates are keeping the tops from, you know, falling one way or the other. And that goes all the way around. Double top plate all the way around. So apparently that is a very useful thing to keep your structure from falling apart. Keeps your corners locked. And I found out that it's much easier if you put those double top plates on after you raise your wall instead of before. Keep that in mind if you're going to do something like this. Anyway, that's what we have right now. Next up is the roof, and I've got all my materials out here. I've got under there some OSB for the sheathing, and I've got 2 2x8x16s that I'm going to cut to 14 feet, and those will be the ridge beam. And then I got all the rest of these 2x6x10s that I'm going to cut to about 9 feet, and we'll have some overhang, and we'll have a overhang on the gable side, which will be this side, and the other side. I don't know what you call the non-gable side, the roof side, maybe. Got my tar paper, or my felt paper. It's not really tar paper, and some miscellaneous roofing things with some ridge vents. Help ventilate the shed. That'll be good. Alright, so next up will be the shed roof.